Hello my friends, and welcome to the second video in the Life of Awesome Change series. I'm so happy that you're joining us, and if you haven't watched that first video, make sure to go back and watch it. It is really important for the continuation of this series. Now in this video, we're going to be talking about the 5 stages that everyone goes through when it comes to changing some element in their life. We're also going to be talking about the 5 components of change. You know, what exactly is involved in making a simple change in your life? Now, before we get started, if you haven't subscribed to my YouTube channel, please make sure to go and do so right now so you get notified every time that I create a new video. I help others make small changes in their life so that they can create a life of awesome. Okay, so the 5 stages of change. Now, just think about how powerful it would be if you were able to recognize and identify what stage of change you're currently in. You would be able to easily and quickly make a plan to move forward and progress to the next stage so that change actually comes to fruition. So let's go ahead and go through the 5 stages of change. Now the first stage is called PreContemplation. And this is the stage of change in which you have absolutely no idea that a change actually needs to occur. So when I was at the height of my drinking, I was literally spending all of my free time lying in bed, watching Netflix, drinking from a bottle of vodka, eating fatty foods, and just ballooning up to over 230 pounds. I would look in the mirror once in a while and be like, oh God, I hate myself. But I never made the connection that, you know what, I actually need to change something if I want to improve my life, if I want to become more comfortable with who I am and actually maybe have a chance at some sort of happiness. And so pre-contemplation is the absolute first stage of change that we should recognize. We need to recognize that, you know, a change actually needs to happen in order to become happier, in order to become more fulfilled, and actually move towards a life of awesome. The second stage of change is contemplation. So at this stage, you actually understand that, you know what, change probably needs to happen if I want to progress in life, if I want to gain more happiness or, you know, take a positive step forward. But there is no intention of actually making that change. So back to, you know, my drinking, that's one of the major changes that I had to make in my life in order to move forward. I was sitting in jail on a plastic mat on a metal bunk bed, lying there. And this was not the first time that I had been in jail as a result, direct or indirect, of my drinking. And, you know, I knew that if I didn't want to keep ending up in this situation, eating that terrible food, being told what to do, when to do it, when to go to bed, when to get up, when to go to work, and all of these other things, what to wear. Let me tell you, orange is not my color. But I knew that a change had to be made. But there really wasn't any intention of actually making that change, especially the first time I went to jail for an extended period of time. You know, I absolutely thought about, as soon as I get out of here, the first stop that I'm going to make is I'm going to call an Uber and I'm going to go to the liquor store because that will make everything all better. So at this stage of the game, you understand that a change has to be made. You know that you're not happy doing what you're doing now, saving the money that you're saving, weighing what you weigh, whatever the case may be. But you really don't care or have any intention of making a change. And that's where stage 3 comes in. The third stage is preparation. At this point, you understand that a change has to be made, and you have some intention of actually doing something about it. A couple of months ago, I was looking in the mirror and I almost broke down in tears. I just simply wasn't happy with the life that I had created for myself, especially over the previous couple of years. I'd gone completely downhill. Like I mentioned, I ballooned up over 230 pounds. I was an alcoholic. I was drinking every day. Nothing was going right in jobs that I had or businesses that I had. I destroyed every relationship that I'd ever created. And I was absolutely miserable. And I would look in the mirror, and the only thing that I could see was this disgusting piece of a human being. I would berate myself over and over, telling me that I'm fat and ugly and no one likes me. And, just keep going on and on and on. And I knew that a change had to be made. And so I had those intentions of actually making a change. I would look in the mirror and be like, okay, I'm going to start losing weight. Okay, I'm going to cut back on my drinking. Okay, I'm going to take a little bit of what I earn and actually put it away. Now, none of that actually came to fruition until I moved on to stage 4. Stage 4 is the action stage. This is where you actively modify your behavior to create the change in your life that you're seeking. So for me, obviously, the very first step that I had to take to make any sort of change in my life was to put down the bottle and keep it put down. I couldn't, take a nip here or a nip there. If I wanted to make any positive change in my life, I had to absolutely abstain from alcohol in order to move forward. With the diet, in order to lose weight, I had to start being more mindful of the foods that I put in my body. No longer could I sit on the sofa all day long and, throw chips and cookies and crackers and pizza and nachos down my throat. I actually had to take action, start meal planning, and buying appropriate groceries in order to produce the results that I wanted. And that's exactly what I did. I put down the bottle. I went to the grocery store and started meal planning for low-carb meal ideas for the week. I would create meals for breakfast and lunch to take to work, and I would actually stick to that regimen. And, I fortunately had lost almost 40 pounds. I'm sober 6 months today as of shooting this video. And, I also had to make small changes in my finances and in building relationships. And, taking those actionable steps has actually produced the results that I was looking for. So into action is probably one of the most important steps within making a change in your life. No change will occur just by sitting around and contemplating about it. But we have to go through that stage in order to get to the action part, which leads me up to step number 5. Stage 5 is maintenance. So once you've gotten into action and you've started taking those actionable steps to create your desired result, then we have to kind of nurture and baby those steps. We have to maintain them. We have to keep going on that path in order to achieve greater success, because most of us don't want to remain stagnant. I've lost, about 40 pounds, but I'm still not at the weight that I want to be at. I want to drop about 30 more pounds to achieve my ideal weight. And so now I've actually kind of plateaued in my weight loss with the regimen that I'm on. So now I have to do some maintenance steps to make sure that I continue with my proper eating habits. But now I may have to take a step backwards and do a different actionable step. Maybe incorporate a little bit of exercise in the mix. So maintaining and action steps kind of go hand in hand. With the drinking thing, I've reached 6 months of sobriety, which I'm really happy and really proud of myself for. And I have to continue to maintain that mindset of I am absolutely not allowed to touch a drop of alcohol for the fear of going back to the miserable person that I was. Now, all of these steps apply to any change that you want to make in your life. Another aspect of my life was I wanted to, start being able to make and save more money. And at the very beginning, I had to go through the pre-contemplation of where I just kind of threw money as it came in. I kind of threw it at out of my pockets. I had to go through the contemplation step where, I'm like, okay, I have absolutely nothing in my bank account. I'm 38 years old and I have absolutely nothing to show for it. It might be time for a change. And then I had to go through the preparation step where, I would actually look at my bank account, take a good hard look at my spending habits, and, decide that a change had to be made and create those intentions of how I might actually be able to change it. Then I had to go into the action step of actually saving some money back from each paycheck, creating new streams of income, and then I had to maintain that philosophy and those actions to continue to keep the ball rolling. So everyone goes through these stages, and the sooner that you're able to identify and recognize those stages, the quicker you can actually move through the process. How cool would it be for you to swiftly move through those practices and start creating rapid change in your life? It would be incredible. You could do so much with your life and achieve so much more happiness. And so we move on to the components of change. Now, the components of change basically consist of what is involved in the actual change itself. And there are 5 different components that every change must contain in order to be successful. Now, the first component is curiosity. Now, I love this one because I believe that every human on the planet is curious in one way or another. We're naturally curious beings. And essentially, curiosity is generally the seeking of wisdom, the questioning of things. And so we need to actually question and be curious about the different components in our life, whether it be financial, spiritual, health, relationships, whatever component of your life. We need to dive into each of those and be curious about how we are feeling and how we're doing in that element right now, and curious about what we could do in order to greaten and heighten that experience within that element. Now, when I was younger, I was fascinated with electronics and technology. I would often tear our computers apart and try rewiring them. And stereo systems, I would rewire the speakers and things like that. I love to figure out how things worked. And that's essentially the curiosity that we need to take within our own lives, within the different elements of our life. We need to tear those elements apart and figure out exactly what's working, what's not working, and how we might be able to improve that. That's the curiosity aspect of change. The second component of change is honesty, and I personally believe this might be the most important component of change. We have to honestly dissect each element of our life and take an honest look of exactly how it's going. It's so easy for a lot of us to kind of sweep things under the rug and say, oh, I'll deal with that later, or it's not as bad as it seems, or I'm way happier than I actually am. A lot of us tend to put on masks for different components of our lives, different elements of our lives, so that we seem on the outside much better than we actually are. That's why social media is so hit or miss. I mean, you kind of only see the facade that people want you to see. But when we're talking about our own lives, we need to be completely honest. There might be some hidden traumas under a component that you may have to deal with. So let's take weight loss, for example. I like to eat as much as or more than the next person. I love going out to dinners and trying new things. And, it's nothing for me to want to sit on the sofa and, eat chips and crackers and cakes and cookies and things like that. But why is that? Why do I experience a heightened sense of serotonin when I put fatty or sugary foods in my body? Now, there is a chemical process that goes on. It kind of clicks some serotonin off in your brain. But emotionally and mentally, why do I actually do it? Is there some sort of underlying trauma? Am I, feeding myself to boost my serotonin because I'm feeling depressed, or I'm anxious, or I'm tired, something along those lines? Did something happen to me as a kid? Was I made fun of for being fat or too thin, or something along those lines? So we need to deal with those underlying traumas, but before we can do that, we actually need to be honest with ourselves about what those traumas are. For the longest time, I had an issue with money. I've always had an obsession with being not just financially stable, but rich. I wanted to be rich. And that was literally my motive for everything that I did. Well, why is that? Probably because I grew up where, we would have spaghetti for, several nights a week, or something we called SOS, which is basically sausage gravy on toast. Very cheap meals. We never took vacations. We never splurged on brand new things. I mean, I never went hungry or anything like that. I was very fortunate in that manner, but we didn't really have anything extra. And I knew that I didn't want to live that way anymore. And so I became obsessed with the fascination of being wealthy. I didn't understand all the hard work and mindset that went behind it. I've started learning that later in life, but it was that obsessive compulsiveness to be wealthy based on that trauma. And so I'm starting to have to change that mindset, starting to have to change that my money habits in order to achieve my goal. And now I'm starting to change as to where it's not being rich that I want, it's that I want to be successful in whatever mindset that is. And that's becoming more important than, actually having the material goods and the bank account that's, a kabillion dollars in a balance. The third component of change is openness. In order to make any sort of change, we actually have to be open to the idea that change needs to occur, and the possibility that it can occur. Losing weight is a tough gig. Some people lose it really quickly. Other people, it's not as quick, if it seems to happen at all. But we have to be open to the possibility that it can happen. Otherwise, we'll just shut ourselves down before we even start. We also have to be open to new ideas about how we might be able to get there. If the first way doesn't work out how we had hoped, maybe hiring a coach, maybe listening to other people who have done what you're trying to do, being open to suggestions would help move that process along. So it's absolutely an important component of change. The fourth component of change is willingness. So we have the curiosity, we have the honesty, we have the openness. Now we need the willingness to actually get into action and make those changes. If you're not willing to do anything, then nothing will happen. And so we have to mentally prepare ourselves to be willing to actually make those changes. Are we willing to actually take 10% or 5% or whatever percent from our paycheck every single time we get paid in order to achieve the financial goals that we want? Are we willing to put in some extra work or some extra time on a side hustle to bring in another line of income? Are we willing to give up the cake and the donut and the chips and things like that in order to drop a couple of extra pounds? Are we willing to look in the mirror and actually see the beautiful person looking back at us? The willingness is probably one of the most difficult components that I have found to actually deal with. You know, like I mentioned, looking in the mirror was not an easy task for me. But once I was open to being able to change, that kind of made becoming willing a little bit easier. And so all of these components kind of go hand in hand. We need all of these components in order to make successful change in our life. And the last but not least component of change is focus. So we will never get anything done by just simply thinking about it. You know, unfortunately, we don't have that magical power. I can't just think about having $1 billion in the bank and there it is. Sadly, it doesn't happen that way, but it does make the process of actually getting to our goal of change more rewarding, in my opinion, in my experience. So we have to focus on the change that we want to make. When I was focused on losing weight, you know, I passed by an entire shelving unit of chips and crackers and cookies and cupcakes and things like that. Everything that I couldn't have if I wanted to achieve my goal. And so every time I would pass by it, I'd kind of eyeball it, because no doubt there would be some wheat thins sitting in a box right there on the shelf. And I love me some wheat thins and cookies and snack cakes and crackers and chips. I love that salty, crunchy, followed by sweet and mushy enjoyment. And, you know, in order to achieve the goal that I wanted of losing weight, I had to focus on exactly what I was putting in my body. I knew that the end result would outweigh the enjoyment, the 30-second enjoyment that I would have from snacking. And so I had to focus on creating a meal plan that was in line with the goals that I wanted to do. I had to focus on actually prepping the food and buying and prepping the food. I had to focus on actually packing it for breakfast and lunch each day. And I had to focus on actually eating it rather than going to a vending machine and getting a big old burrito. So focus is that actionable component that makes change happen. So we have to have focus. And this is why I would highly, highly recommend you only focus on 1 or 2 primary changes at a time. I've done it before as to where I try focusing on different elements from every aspect of my life, from finance to spirituality to health to relationships, every aspect of my life. I would try and make changes in all at once. And undoubtedly, I would fall short in all of them. But when I strictly decided to focus on my health, that was my primary focus at the time, and so I quit drinking. That was a change that I made so I could progress to the next stage, which was actually losing the weight that I wanted to lose. When I focused on that one element, miraculously, other changes in my life naturally started happening. Because I had that focus on that one, I instinctually and unwittingly, started making changes in the rest of my life. My finances started getting better because I had made that one change. My relationships started getting better because I was starting to gain my confidence back again. My health was obviously improving. And my spirituality started improving for some oddball reason, but it just started happening. But because I was able to focus all of my attention on that one change, so many other changes in my life happened. All right, my friends, I hope you enjoyed this video. We have talked about the 5 stages of change, as well as the 5 components of change. So here's a challenge for you. I want you to take a look at your life and identify what element of the fresh analysis, that's finance, relationship, employment, spirituality, and health, needs your absolute attention. Which one of those elements is the most important to you and needs a change right now? Now, with that, I want you to identify what stage of change you are in within that element, and also to identify what of the 5 components you're using to make that change. I hope you have a fantastic day, my friends. Make sure to comment down below. I would love to hear your answers. And in the next video, we are going to discover a way to absolutely dominate any change that you want to make in your life. I'll see you over there, my friends. Make sure to like, comment, and subscribe to this channel. I hope you have an awesome day. Cheers, my friends.